So welcome, everybody. Really happy that Father Jesse and Manuel and Nadia are with us today. They've been with us throughout the weekend, have preached at all our masses. Father Jesse will preach at his last mass this evening. And I know folks from the applause have been very moved by Father Jesse's stories and his presence and presence of his colleagues today. I first got to know Father Jesse through the Oblate partnership that I'm part of. And then at Our Lady of Lourdes, where I was pastor, we did a mission partnership. And a number of folks, the Ditters and others went down there, and it was really powerful and just really moving. I see Sue Smitka, who went down there as well. Janice is going to talk about her experience very briefly. But we're just really moved by Father Jesse's presence and his great work in Tijuana, and he's going to show us this video. We're also recording it, and we're going to get it out to our parishioners who couldn't be here. But we've seen a real strong response and generous response in terms of people supporting financially the work that they're doing, which really just lifts so many people, which Father Jesse's going to talk about. So again, welcome, thank you, and I'm going to turn it over to Janice Anderson.
Thank you. Just very briefly. So Father Jesse is a missionary of the Oblates of Mary Immaculate, and he serves in Tijuana. Now, Tijuana is one of the most populous cities in Mexico, and they have a lot of industry, but also some deep and systemic poverty. I had the privilege to go down to visit with Father Jesse and the Tijuana missions of Oblates this past May. And honestly, I was prepared to encounter what I had encountered in other visits to the U.S.-Mexican border. Lines of migrants seeking to cross over to the United States, hearing stories of desperation in Mexico and as they hold out for hope in the U.S. I was totally surprised, inspired, and humbled to see something very different. What I discovered was a community with incredible poverty and need, but with a community with a powerful element of hope. I found a community of people who are not fleeing to the U.S., but finding agency and ability in their own lives and community. Father Jesse accompanies the people of Tijuana in a powerful, Holy Spirit-filled way. Responding to the needs as they arise, he builds partnerships and systems to encounter, uplift, and accompany those in need. A charismatic disciple of Christ, Father Jesse works to empower the community, providing spiritual, educational, medical, and financial support to the people in the Tijuana community. We are honored to have him and your colleagues here, and I welcome you, Father Jesse.
Thank you. Really excited to be here. We have some friends from Our Lady of Lourdes, so welcome. Mark has been to our mission, and others from Our Lady of Lourdes, and they've seen the work that we're doing. First of all, you heard the homily, but I think photos, pictures say much more than words. So you'll see a few pictures so you can understand the reality of Tijuana and what we're doing, how we're working there. This is the area to one of our mission churches. In Tijuana, we have one main church, the parish, and then we have 8 other mission churches. So on Sundays, we're running around because we have a mass over here, a mass over here, a mass over there, right? And that's one of our communities. So you can imagine that's the road up to the church. So you can imagine when it rains. It's muddy and it's difficult to get around. But people in the mud still go to church, a great testament of the faith of the people. So some information about Tijuana. Does this work? Just so you know, we're right on the border with San Diego, Tijuana, and our mission is a bit to the east. So we're not in downtown. We're in the east, the periphery. Closer to the beach. Tijuana is right close to the beach. We're about a half an hour away from the beach. That is the border wall. So on your left-hand side, that's the US. On the right-hand side, that's Mexico. And it goes into the water. In the past, they say that people could actually pray with each other, families that were broken because of migration through this wall. Now they don't allow people to come near the wall. Tijuana is one of the largest and most busiest border. If you don't have a fast pass, you could wait 5 to 6 hours in line, unless you know a trick. When our friends came from here from Minnesota, we sent someone in a van a few hours in advance. So when we were done, we just went to the border, got into the van, and crossed the border. So we have tricks to make your stay easier to get around. So that's the border. So on the left-hand side, you have Tijuana. It's very populated. On the right-hand side, you have the US. So again, it's right across the border. 40 minutes from the airport. About 20 minutes from the border, but it's a whole different country. And I think that's what's most powerful, that in a few hours, you could be in 2 different worlds. And that's incredible. So we're towards the east. Well, go ahead, Manuel. So Maria Inmaculada is the name of the parish. It used to be called St. Eugene, but the community grew so much, we had 16 mission churches. But it grew so much, over 150,000 to 200,000 people in the area. So the bishop told us to divide. So we gave one of our main church with our clinic and our school for children with special needs to the diocese and 5 of the mission churches, and we took the rest where the communities kept on growing because of migration. So this is a border reality. Migrant population, squatters, people that just squat on land, people that squat don't have any access to proper sewer system or running water, sometimes electricity. So people are still living in those conditions. Fast and growing lack of infrastructure and poverty, drug trafficking and crime. Don't be afraid if you ever come visit. Nothing will happen to you. The violence is among the people that deal with drugs and crime. We've had Anglo priests, and we get over 100 volunteers every year, and never had we had one problem, not one problem with the people that come. But there is crime, and it affects young people, especially natives of Tijuana or people that come from the south of Mexico. And one more, please. Well, this is going the wrong way. Yeah, so many factories from the US and other countries. It's amazing, and it keeps on growing. In our community, there's 3 new companies, 3 new factories, and that creates chaos when it comes to traffic because they're not improving the streets in our area, but they're bringing more factories. And each factory could hire up to 5,000 to 10,000 people. And most of the people don't drive there because they wouldn't be able to afford the gas to drive to the factory. So they have all these buses that pick up people, take them to the factories, and then take them back home. 48 hours of work. The minimum wage or the wages for people have gone up. A few years ago, they were about $70, $80. Now they're about $100. So that's what the factories look like. People produce many things. We have Coca-Cola, Toyota, many other car factories there in Tijuana, right on the border, because it's an easy access to bring the supplies into the US. So, like I said, 48 hours per week, about $100 a week. And again, it is incredible because things are not cheap. I talked about gas during the homily, but I've taken 4 or 5 people to eat, regular restaurant, right? We end up paying like $60 to $70. So I imagine, like, how can a family ever go to a restaurant? How can a family even have the luxury of just taking their family to a semi-nice restaurant? It's impossible. So when I think about the factories and the fact that people have jobs, but they remain in poverty, there's something morally wrong here. Because no matter how hard they work, they will never leave poverty. And then if they have an emergency, there's an accident in the family, how do they pay for that? How will they pay for their children to buy a uniform, to go to school? All public schools require a uniform. We had a few children, migrant children, didn't want to go to school because they could not afford the uniform, so other children would make fun of them, bully them. So just a uniform can make a huge difference. Not to mention university studies. How can they afford $400 a year to send their child, their son or daughter, to a university? So this is a reality that seems to be good because it provides jobs, but then people stay in poverty. So that's some of the reality of the squatters. Our community has many homes like that. We talked about, we have a roofs program, right? You'll see tires on top of houses with tarps because they leak. Horrible roofs. And in the rainy season, we don't get a lot of rain in Southern California, but when we do, we could get some rain. So we have the roofs caving in, like I said at the Mass, elderly people sleeping on wet mattresses because of the conditions of the weather. So we give away a lot of tarps. Right now, people come to get tarps, and we have a small program to fix a few roofs. I think some of our friends helped in fixing some roofs from Minnesota. Put a roof in someone's house. That's the infrastructure. Can you imagine the people still live in these conditions? When volunteers come, we usually go and we visit families because I think it is so important for them to go inside a house and to see the conditions. This is a great experience for young men and women from the US. I went to Honduras when I was in college. I grew up in LA, but I went to Honduras and it changed my life. The fact that I came back home and I had electricity or running water. So for other young men and women to go, to visit, to see, and then to come back, changed. I realized when I had this experience that I would complain way too much. That I had an attitude of entitlement. I deserve it. So when you see the rest of the world, you realize that everything we have is a gift, and we are very blessed. So for young people to see this could be life-changing. Tarps, again, very popular. We visit a lot of the families, and sometimes even getting to someone's home is very difficult. Can you imagine someone lives in one of those houses? In order for you to go down the hill, you go through tires. One of the stories that Nadia shared, her and a doctor would visit a woman that was heavy. She was obese because of different health conditions. One day they came to visit her. There was a lot of people gathered outside the house. They thought she was dying. She was turning purple. Our doctor went in. Jocelyn, she saw that this lady needed oxygen. She went back to the parish. They had just donated a tank of oxygen. They took it back just in time. They called 911 just in time so that she could come back, that she could wake up. She was dying. So even just an oxygen tank can make a huge difference. But the fact that we have doctors that do home visits, it's a life-changing experience. We had Señor Nicholas, a man that was abandoned by his family, could not move, so he would go to the bathroom in his bed. The family abandoned him. So for our doctors to come and to change the sheets and to organize a community that would bring them food. Can you imagine someone unable to move, no family members that could help, the conditions that they live? We were also very blessed that we put a new roof on the house of Nicholas because his roof was also leaking. So that's right next to our church. All those houses up here, they're all people squatting. Some people work really hard and they're fixing their houses. But then you have other people that squat, and like I said, when people squat, there is no sewer system. There is no running water. So this is extreme poverty. And when we talk about poverty, we do. The poor have a lot of hope. But when we talk about extreme poverty, there is very little that we can say it's positive about extreme poverty. There's a lot of sexual abuse because many times big families live together, cousins, uncles, and sleep in one room. So there's sexual abuse, there's anxiety, there's depression. So our psychologists, our program is very important, especially when people come from extreme poverty conditions. The lack of access to education. Like I said in the homily, even though public school is free, it requires supplies and a uniform. So every August, we give over 1,000 school supplies, a backpack with notebooks and pens, and that's life-changing for the people. They're so excited with their backpack. And sometimes we promote it. We're gonna start giving the school supplies, but then we get way more people and families than what we have. We plan for about 1,000, then we get 1,200. And what do you do when you have 200 children that don't have the backpack or the school supplies? Uniforms, like I said, is another big thing. Even if they go to public school, they have to buy their own uniform. So some families can't even afford a uniform for their children. There are families that do recycling. They don't work for factories. So they'll recycle and they'll do different things. But if you recycle, then you have no access to health care. So if you get sick, you have no way of paying for medication. At least if you work for a factory, you get health care. Even though the system will have you wait months for a surgery. Even in emergency surgery, people have to wait months because it's the free health care that's provided by the factories. More pictures of the graffiti and gangs. This is a family where the girl in the wheelchair, she was one of our altar servers. She came from a family where the dad was a drug addict. The mother would wash clothes to make a living. They had the 4 daughters, and one of them was an altar server. And again, the amount of pain and suffering in some families growing up in an environment that's very toxic, that includes drugs and violence. So then, fires, the people that have been there, you see regular cables, people steal the electricity when they can't afford to pay. So they'll put illegal wires, and that creates fires. So we get a lot of fires because people build their huts or houses from pieces of wood, and then they steal the electricity. It creates a fire. Not only does their house burn, but it could burn other houses from the neighbors. So our response to all of this, it could be overwhelming. And I was telling Father Dan, sometimes we get several people that need an emergency surgery, and it's a lot of money. And they come to us because we're their only hope. So it could be overwhelming, but we have to respond. That's our founder, St. Eugene, and he gave us a very powerful quote. Una más, una más, una más. We must lead men to act like human beings, first of all, then like Christians, and finally, we must help them to become saints. Humans, Christians, saints. So first, we have to worry about them becoming fully human, fully alive. Education, medication, healthcare, decent living, food. So the Oblates, we don't just preach the gospel, we also preach the gospel with action, with charity. So we're very involved in the needs of the community. First, they become fully human. So we worry about their human needs. Then their Christian needs. And then saints, that they realize that they have a purpose and they're called to give back. And that's what we're doing. So we do a lot of work with youth ministry. When people say the young people don't want to go to church, that is not entirely true. For us, the problem is that we don't have spaces big enough. We have hundreds of young people that come to our retreats. And I would say that from our youth ministry programs, 90 to 95% of the young adults are in college. Again, 90 to 95%. We make sure that they all go to college. So they're part of an environment that everyone's going to college, so it becomes normal for them. They come from families where they never knew anyone that went to college. We had a young man, David, you'll see him in the video. His father died in prison. His mother worked making very little. So when he was growing up, he joined a gang. And then he joined our youth ministry program where he went to school. And then we convinced him to apply to the university. Even his family said it was a mistake for him to go to college. It was going to be a waste of money. His fate, like the rest of his cousins and brothers, is to join a gang and just do whatever they can to get money. David was tempted to live his university studies, and he continued. He graduated as a psychologist. He's a psychologist, licensed psychologist. He continues to help in our mission. He wrote a very important article about hope we were talking about, that the Oblates believed in him, even when his family didn't. And because of that, he's now a psychologist. So our social ministry program, we give from 26 to 30,000 food baskets every year. People line up to receive a food basket. The food basket has the basic stuff, flour, oil, rice, beans, pasta, toilet paper. And sometimes we forget that people have other needs. We were giving food baskets one day, and a woman went to one of the female volunteers, and she was very embarrassed. And she said, I have a few daughters. Do you have any female products? And she was saying, what do you mean? Do you have any female products for my daughters? They were growing up, they were teenagers, and they didn't have money to buy female products. So we realized that there's other needs. Our young doctors, they go through gauze and just different things so much because they're visiting the people. So sometimes we give food, sometimes we provide other services. That's our health program. That's one of our doctors. Her name is Carla. She's currently in Brazil, helping in Brazil. She will be coming back next month. our health program. We have 3 doctors, 4 doctors now. We have Nadia as one of our nurses. We have another nurse, a young man that helping the program. 2 of our doctors are there full-time. Nadia is there also full-time visiting. She used to work for General Hospital. ¿Puedo decir tu historia? Muy bien. She graduated, ¿hace cuántos años te graduaste? 4 years ago. She was working for General Hospital in Tijuana. And the health system in General Hospital is really bad. She was making about $130 a week as a registered nurse. $130. And then, even worse, she had a car because she had to transport go there, right? She was spending from $60 to $70 a week in gas. So that's half. So sometimes even the system is working against you. But Nadia's not working for us. She's also working with Manuel. He's an engineer, and they work with donors. So they visit, especially the elderly, the sick. We have a lot of health fairs. A lot of people don't know that they have diabetes. There's a really poor diet when it comes to carbs and sugar. So many people develop diabetes, and they're not even aware of that. And because of that, they don't fix their diet. So they end up getting really sick, sometimes losing some limbs because of the diabetes. So in this health fairs, finding out if people have diabetes, if people have heart conditions. So we do a lot of health fairs also for the community. The scholarship program, we give about 150 scholarships every year, $200 per semester, $400 a year. Now, talk about tuition. That's for a public school. In Tijuana, we have 3 public universities, huge universities. But all the young people that apply, they take about 10 to 20%, the top number, right? So the rest don't go into a public university. So they have to apply to a private, not because it's better, but because they didn't make it to a public university. So tuition for a private university goes to about $1,600 a year. So that creates a huge problem. ¿Puedo decir tu historia? Nadia applied for the nursing school at the public university, and she didn't make it. And she applied again. She didn't make it. So she thought her dream was over. She would end up working in a factory because her parents could not afford to pay for a private. But thanks to the scholarship program, we were able to help her, and she's now a nurse, and she continues to serve in our community. So muchas gracias, Nadia. We have a migrant program. I'm very impressed with Mexico because we received a lot of migrants from Haiti. Sometimes if you receive migrants from Central America, sometimes they look like Mexicans. But from Haiti, they're not. They're from African descent. Yet, people in Mexico treated them very well. So we got this huge migration of people from Haiti and then from Central America. You heard of the big caravan, I think it was 2019, right? It was all over the news. We received about 6,000. They came all at once to Tijuana. And they stayed in this huge place, out in the open. They slept in tents. They waited in long lines for just a cup of soup, or to shower, or to go to the bathroom. So we got really involved with the migrants. And now we're working with about 160 families that are still there. Many of them don't want to come to the US. They just want to get documents in Tijuana so they could work and send their children to school. So we have lawyers that help them get their resident in Tijuana. And they're very excited and happy. We had a family from Guatemala, and their temporary residence was going to expire. And they needed a large amount of money. If not, they would go back to Guatemala. She was able to study, the wife, and become a teacher. But her residence was going to expire. So we wrote a story. We had enough money. We got the lawyers, so they get the permanent residence. And they were able to stay. They were so scared that they would have to go back to Guatemala, to the violence of their country. So they felt so blessed and happy to stay with us. We have the School for Children with Special Needs. We're going to see a video with more pictures of the children. It's really sad stories. Many schools, all schools will reject them. There are some schools for children with special needs, but they're very expensive. So if you live in poverty, there's no way you can send your children to another school. So that's why the Oblates opened up this school. It's free. They pay small fees here and there, but mostly it's free. We have an engineer program. Our engineers are working with companies in the US trying to design some limbs, prosthetic stuff, get involved with engineering. They also help with the engineering of buildings in our community. We have our mental health program. Now we have 5 licensed psychologists and many volunteers. A lot of depression, a lot of anxiety, a lot of suicide attempts. So our psychologists are working really hard in our mental health program. And like I said, we have 8 mission churches. That's our main church. We do a lot of mission with youth, a lot of work with youth. We're going to put a short video, and then I'm going to open up for questions. If you have any questions or thoughts, or just any ideas of how we could improve our programs. El video. So that video is about 2 to 3 years old. We have a new video, but it's in Spanish, where Nadia and Manuel. So I'm going to introduce them. Pásenle a los dos. And this will be the last part. If you have any questions or thoughts, Manuel is a civil engineer, industrial engineer. So an industrial engineer, they learn about processes. So he's in charge of some of our fundraising activities. Silk Screen, they have some shirts in the back. If you want to purchase a shirt, help their program at $15. They create their own shirts. We also have a coffee shop now. He's also in charge of that. And he is in charge of writing to donors, sending stories. If you want to hear stories, every 2 weeks we have a newsletter with stories in English, powerful stories, videos, and just everything having to do with donors and fundraising. That's Manuel Palafox. And then Nadia is our nurse, like we said. She graduated 3 años. ¿Te graduaste? 4 years ago. And she's now full-time at our parish because we have many needs. She's also helping Manuel with some of the donors. Again, they work so many hours, and they have many, many stories, heartbreaking stories of people that don't have health care. And they were able to come with us today, so we're very grateful. These young professionals, un aplauso, muchas. Are there any questions or thoughts before we end? Question? This one?
You mentioned Toyota
Yeah.
having a factory.
Yeah.
Is that owned by an American ownership, or is it owned by the Mexican?
They're not owned by Mexicans. They're foreign companies. Maybe we have a lot of companies from Korea, from many from Asia, from China. Toyota, Manuel, ¿quién es el dueño de Toyota en México? Okay, so it would probably be they're owned by their own country, and they just pay some tariffs, and they have their companies in Mexico. Many companies from Taiwan, from China, from many parts of the world.
So what you're saying is that Toyota is paying $100 a month to these workers? A week.
It's about 100. If some people might even earn less, some people might earn a little bit more, but many of the big companies, Samsung, ¿cuáles otras compañías conocidas? Hyundai, Samsung, many of the companies. We're just gonna take photos next time of all the factories that are there. Many companies, and they do pay. That's why they go there, because they pay 100, maybe 120, maybe less. A few years ago, we had one of our young men. Her mother had worked for a factory for 14 years, and she was still making $85 a week. This is a week, but it's a little bit more than the minimum wage. So they feel that they're following the law, you know? Mexico has to change their laws so that the companies can pay more. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, hi, Father Jesse. Are there other faiths that do mission work there, and do they do it any differently than the Oblates?
We are very blessed because we focus on helping them so they could help others. And the results have been amazing, even in vocations. We talked about from that parish, right now there's 8 in the seminary with the missionary Oblates, 1 parish. So it's an effect that just kind of moves people forward. Cambonis, are you guys familiar with the order? Daniel Camboni, they're missionaries. They came to our mission, they love what we're doing, and they're talking to the Bishop of Tijuana because they want to bring their missionaries there and do some of the things that we do. Focus on education, focus on youth ministry, and have them help others. So there's other orders, but the way we're doing ministry right now is very unique to the Oblates. Anybody else? Great questions, thank you. Over here? Oh, one here and then there.
Well, thank you, Father. I commend everything you're doing. I mean, it's amazing. I'm coming from this as a member of the parish here, and also, to some extent, you're preaching to the choir in the sense that the Basilica, is,
Sure.
as you know, is very well known, and it's going to support your mission with finances and prayers and all those great things. However, when you go back to Mexico, right now, here, we are dealing with a lot of change, as you know.
Sure.
The thing that strikes me, though, now is if our new government does some of the things they say they're going to do, my guess it's going to change the situation at the border because people are going to be brought there
Sure.
with incredible numbers. And I don't know. I was impressed with your homily this morning in the sense that you spoke about hope, and that hope leads to action, which I think is very applicable for us. I have some relatives and friends, though, who would be cynical, and they would say, oh, I'm so glad the Oblates are doing that, because then those people won't come to our country, to the United States, which doesn't reflect on you at all, but it's kind of our reality.
Sure.
That there is a lot of people, the vote showed it, who don't care about people outside of the U.S., and they don't want the people here. So that's a statement. I guess I had to say it more for myself than for anybody else. But Father, from your perspective, what would you say? You're a U.S. citizen, I imagine.
Yeah.
Okay. What would you say, or what do you say to the people in Mexico now, or what do you say to your confreres? What would you say to us in terms of
Migration.
well, migration, and just with the new presidency and
Sure.
what that might? That's all.
First of all, most people or all people would rather stay at home with their families and their culture and their food. They would. People that leave, they leave with a broken heart of leaving their families, and many people leave because of violence. When I was in college, before I became an oblate, I did missionary work in Central America and Honduras. I was there for 2 years. And there were times that people were so involved in the violence that when they wanted to stop and change their life, it was so difficult. So we had people tell us, help him to get out of Honduras. Help him to get out of here because he will get killed. So the stories and situations of people are very unique. And I think it was Mother Teresa or Martin Luther King, one of them said, it's impossible to hate someone once you know their story. So listening to people's realities. But if people can stay in their own home, they would. So most of the people that we work with, none of them want to come to the U.S. They want to become professionals there. And if for some reason a family feels the need or they're forced to leave, they do it with a broken heart and with the hope that they will find better opportunities in another place. But it's a very difficult situation. We are getting ready, preparing ourselves for the chance that we will receive some migrants now returning to Mexico because of deportations. There is a religious order that does specific work with them, but the Oblates were thinking, what do we do? Also for 2 reasons, and I was talking about this yesterday. Many of the migrants that come from Central America, they either leave their houses with no documents, they lose the documents along the way, so they come here. They come to Tijuana. Children have no birth certificate or documents. It's almost impossible for them to go to school. So our next project, do we open up a school for children, migrant children? Because if they don't go to school for 2 to 3 years, they'll never catch up. So what do we do with children that don't have any documents, that don't have birth certificate? Human beings, that if we don't do something, their lives would just be at a disadvantage forever. So we constantly think, we pray, we allow the Holy Spirit to guide us. But the best part is that we have a lot of people now involved. And from the young adults, we're creating the new programs that would help. So we're getting ready. We're praying also because many families will be separated. It's a very, very difficult situation, and we're called to respond whenever the problem arises. Thank you for your comment.
Hi, thank you. You're doing really great work, and I think you just answered the question I had. What is like the next, like what does the next look like? So you just mentioned that, and my next question would be, I think you mentioned a lot of success stories, but what are there other stories that are not necessarily as successful, and what keeps you going when it is like that? And my other question
Sure,
would
here,
be,
go ahead.
my other question would be, was the local government or like local leaders always supportive of your mission, or did they come along? Like, did you have to prove yourself?
They love our mission, but they leave us alone. They don't help, but they don't stop us, you know? And they do love the work that we're doing. We're getting some attention. We do a lot of stories. We write stories because it's a very successful story of hope, of young people getting up and helping their own community. A very, very unique place. David, the young man you saw that became a psychologist, he had a story. I was in World Youth Day in Panama. So I went to Panama. I was gone. There's other oblates there, but he was visiting a young lady that needed a surgery, an emergency surgery. She was dying. And he tried calling family members. He tried getting a hold of me because it was a lot of money for the surgery. And this young lady did die. So for him, it was so painful because he felt that he had it in his hand, the possibility of helping someone, and he was unable to. And of course, he also got counseling. You know, it's not his fault, but it could be challenging. Not all stories are positive. Some stories, we don't have enough money to pay for someone's surgery. We do what we can. But hopefully there's more positive stories than negative stories. And even people just getting involved helps them out of their depression. It helps their health when they're involved in our community. So that's another way of them becoming a little bit better. Not everything's positive, but we're praying and we're working, and we continue to preach and write stories to get more support for our mission. Any other questions? Thank you so much. I've been in Tijuana it's going to be 11 years. They were supposed to move me out of there a few years ago because missionaries, they usually stay there 3 years, 6 years, maybe 9. I'm going on 11, so pray for me too, for whatever my next endeavor, my next mission would be. But I'm very happy, and if I could stay there longer, I would. We're in the process of building a new center because a lot of the stuff that we build it on property of the diocese. If there's a church, it belongs to the diocese. So even if we build a clinic, when the missionary oblates leave, they have to give that to the diocese, and that happened to us. So now we're buying a piece of land. We've been on this for a few years. Finally, it seems that it's going to come true in the next few months, where it's going to be a land that would belong to the oblates, where we could build a new clinic, a new school for children with special needs, retreat center, that even if we leave, the programs will continue. The spirit of the oblates in Eugene will continue in that area, in that community. So pray for that also, and thanks again for your attention, your participation, and everything that you do for us.
Before you leave, thank you so much, Father Jesse, Manuel, Nadia. So grateful that you're here. We have an immigration team here at the Basilica, and they met yesterday morning, and we were wishing you had come just a half a day early. We could have been together. Nevertheless, as we spoke and we reflected and looked forward to, we know that there's so much we need to learn about any changes, as Brother Mike was talking about, and how we can engage on so many different levels here in the United States. So we will do that together over this next year and beyond. And we will also look to partner with you in this Oblate incredible mission. So if you're interested in being part of that, I know there are some people who've been down there with me. Sue and I went together in May. If you're interested in being part of that, please let us know, and we'll work together to figure out a positive way to engage together. And finally, I do want to point out the table in the back with those T-shirts that you made and
Because
brought.
it's some of their work.
It's their work, and you can buy them. And do you sell them online?
Yes.
Yes. So maybe we can look online and buy some as well. So again, thank you for being here. Thank you for all that you do and the witness that you give us. And we know this is not easy, and yet we will work together to reach out to our brothers and sisters. Thank you for being here. Peace be with you.
Thank you so much.